I'll jump in on the beginning. And I think it'd be real important to say the brand or the moniker was maybe more of a natural evolution. It was the late 50s when a DJ referred to Nashville as Music City. There is lore that says when the Fisk Jubilee Singers went to tour the world and they were in England to raise money for Fisk, that the Queen of England said, "You all are from that Music City." So we use that. We think that's, it's been said enough that we're going to say it's true. Nobody can prove otherwise.
Really?
So there's a long history. And then there was a DJ that said it on the air one day, and it said Music City, USA. And it really was maybe the beginning of the brand, but nobody knew it. Then there was angst for, does that help us or hurt us? You know, we're more than music, or we don't want to be hee-haw, or we're not just country, or the Belle Meade group wanted to stay away from it. And a lot of conversation about that. And so it was used when convenient, ignored when it was convenient. But it wasn't really a brand. It was a name. And I think really important as we talk about all that, you know, a slogan and a name are not necessarily a brand.
Right.
You know, a brand, you know, Starbucks and Kleenex and Coke, those are brands. And in our efforts, back maybe 11 or 12 years ago, when we separated from the chamber, we went through a strategic planning process. And it was that, right, we lost the theme park. We were coming out of 9/11. There was just a lot of who are we, what are we? The Nashville Network was gone. We were struggling a little bit. And we involved universities and general business and the music industry. And everybody sat around. And we cheated a little bit. And we said, we don't really want to discuss whether or not we should use music. That will never be able to top that. And it's such a strong differentiation that we ought to use. So now let's talk about, can we make it a true brand? Can we all use it? Mm-hmm. You know, it started with, from that law firm, Music City USA hurts when I'm recruiting new lawyers or trying to get some prominent lawyer to relocate. Same thing with Vanderbilt.
Is that
hurts
because
us.
it was still hillbilly? I
mean, yeah, it was
the connotation.
It was the whole hee-haw perception. So we made a strategic decision right then to drop the USA from the conversation and think about ourselves on a global basis. It was very
limiting.
Very strategic because of the limitations.
Right.
And then we said, let's talk about what the brand really means by definition. Songwriters. We were the home of bluegrass, gospel, country, songwriting, and some of the best musicians in the world. So we go, there's a great story. Goes back to Fisk Jubilee.
Right.
We had a great R&B scene at a particular point. You know, Jimi Hendrix learning to play guitar here and taking off on the Chitlin circuit out of Nashville. It just was staring us in the face. So literally a year and a half, 140 people, we can and should do this, and we should own it. Otherwise, we're going to look like Charlotte, Indy, St. Louis.
Anything else,
yeah. That's so interesting from a musical perspective. Right around that period is right when a lot of people from LA and New York started coming to Nashville, and then you had the Kings of Leon and the Black Keys and Jack White, and it's interesting that it all occurred right around the time when you
occurred. You know, I think it helped. You know, then the politicians and a lot of the businesses said, "Okay, we get it." We did a brand toolkit, so we purchased several hundred 45 record, the old 45 cases. And we did the story of Nashville. We did like a catalog on merchandise you could buy and use. Then we did facts, who lives here, who records here,
Right.
some of that. And so there was the whole kit. So we would tell you how to do it if you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
One of the favorite things about rolling it out, we got Coca-Cola to put some signs on the back of their delivery trucks. And so at our press conference, we had a truck parked outside here, and it said, on the back said, "Welcome to Music City. Singing makes you thirsty. Grab an ice cold Coke." And that was that great,
Yeah.
here's an
great.
example of what does Coke have to do with music?
Right.
Right.
Well, nothing until you use the
Until you
brand,
use the brand.
right? And that kind of started it, and it has morphed, it has evolved, it has strengthened. More people have moved here, more people get it. Better music's coming out of here, more diverse music.
And you almost don't have to. It's not. It doesn't feel forced at all. It is who we are.
I
And
think
Yeah.
that's a great.
how we. It's not.
Yeah.
You don't even have to tell anybody there's a Music City brand because it just is.
Yeah.
Now
when-
it seems,
when-
especially people moving here
When we
now.
were talking with Catherine, it kind of hit me at the end of the interview. It's like, well, Music City to me is music because that's what I do. I write songs and make a living as a music publisher, but it means a completely different thing for my father, who's an attorney, and who's a native Nashville.
I think it's well said. Part of when we go to the brand part, we used a book by a brand expert named Dwayne Knapp, and the book was The Brand Mindset. And it's one of my favorite lesson that I got. So we finished. We used this book as the model, and some of the things were okay. What do people experience when they come here? So through that year and a half process, we sent people to the airport. We had them drive into the city. We had them get in taxis and go, "Are you really experiencing a brand?" So the airport didn't have live music
Right.
back then. The interstate sign said "Home of the Grand Ole Opry." Now they say Music City. The traffic signal boxes around the city, which are now wrapped
Right.
with an artist, and it's obviously got to be a real singer, songwriter, musician.
Right.
Can't be a model.
Right.
And we have music coming out of boxes. And then the guitar pick sign. So we needed to make sure the experience was real. And the lesson was, I called the author of the book and asked him if he'd come speak at a luncheon. And he didn't know he had used his book. So he was flattered and was considering it. And he goes, "Have you done any research? Have you tested it?" I did that. No.
Probably should have thought of that.
How do you know you have a brand?
How many years after this was?
This was,
Soon after the launch.
yeah, it was a few months after we had gotten a lot of
Okay.
things in place. And so I said, "I'll call you back." And
Research.
we went out and did some research, man on the street and internet, and the results came back exceptionally strong. So we sent him the surveys. He reviewed it. He said, "Okay, I'll come." And so then we had him come in and talk about the brand and that it's more than a slogan and it's
Right.
more than a logo.
Yeah.
It's a way of life. It just permeates everything. And then one of the great things that was also said in the planning process, Jack Dillard was on our board, president of the Predators. And they do a great job. They're a great example of incorporating the brand with music at intermission and using artists when they rolled out. But people were saying, "Yeah, it's music and more." Because there was still the fight and the tension of,
It's not
"Well,
just
I'm more than music.
Yeah.
I have an art museum, or
Yes.
I have." And he said, "Wait." He goes, "It's music in more, not music and more." Probably the best way to say it. Every city has art museums. Every city has law firms. Every city has historic homes and gardens. We do ours with music. We do ours different. So the experience is true of the brand. And the music in more, our brand promise, which we developed in part of that process, is part of every decision that we make today.
Oh gosh, when the Music City Center opened, I think there's a musician about every 20 feet. It's awesome.
There's still music, and the design of the building is is music.
Well, even to that point, before we went public with the plan, we named it. We said, nobody has a shot at screwing this up. And so when we rolled it out as a Music City Center. It never became a conversation. And that, I'm still surprised at that,
Yeah.
but it was intentional.
Right.
It was behind the scenes, strategic, but intentional. And then the building incorporated, to your point,
The design.
music in the art, music in acoustics are important, the exterior architectural features, the Songwriter Hall of
Which is
Fame,
great.
all
All
of
of
it
it.
said we're not screwing around.
Right.
I'd love y'all's thoughts, maybe as follow up to the question on really the future.
Right.
Personally, I think we can ride it.
I
as
agree.
long as well.
From a actual music perspective, country is predominantly where I am, but I'm also, as a music publisher, involved in pop, and Timbaland is a writer who writes for us, and the format is so wide right now that there's all sorts of records being made, and it's amazing how many people are coming here from LA and New York because people want to be here in a creative spot where it lends itself to better songs and to better records, and which has been great.
Couldn't agree more.
And not only with that, it's a lower cost of doing business in those cities. So from a business perspective, you can be with even more creative people than you can in other cities, and it makes sense from a business perspective to even do it here and have more and more of those companies move to Nashville.
I think it went from being a hindrance
Mm-hmm.
to recruiting to being an asset, and now we use it in the
Right.
sales pitch, and we bring songwriters in to talk to
And everything.
corporate relocation opportunities. And when I have a significant client, we will almost always finish the visit with a beer at Tootsie's in the back room and a surprise songwriter
Somebody
drop
brought
in.
it.
Just don't know how they knew we were there.
Yeah.
And come play a few songs. And every time it starts with, I'm not
Every
really a
time.
country music fan, to tears, or, oh, that's my favorite song, or I had no idea that was written.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, and it just, I always push that. I say, if you're judging a genre, then you really don't belong here, and you're not
Right.
really a music fan. You're a music snob. So there's good and bad music in every
Exactly.
genre and every format.
Exactly.
So judge the music, and that's fine. But if you say, oh, I don't like gospel, oh, I don't like country, well then, you don't really like music.
Right.
And
I've got a question for you two, and I don't want to get too off topic, but it's really interesting. There are a lot of companies moving off Music Row, with Sony moving down here, with CMT moving down here. Is there a plan to help preserve Music Row instead of becoming?
it's a conversation. I'm not sure there's a plan yet. One thing we have, maybe it's a bigger picture. We've gone to the mayor and said, we feel like our next strategic plan is bigger than us. And, it's how do we make sure that TMZ doesn't ruin
Right.
our lifestyle? How do we make sure Walgreens doesn't screw up Lower Broad?
Right.
How do we begin to take care of
The
the
brand.
things?
And as a songwriter, I still take pride in being one of the boys who makes the noise on 16th
Sixth
Avenue.
Avenue.
Yes.
And I think that's part of, the answer.
It's part of the
Right.
trade.
We've got to
Yeah.
look at
Right.
all of that because 16th and 17th Avenue
Yeah.
don't need to go.
And I was
away.
fortunate enough to work for Mike Curb, who purchased the RCA and purchased the Kwanzaa Hut in an effort to preserve that Music City brand.
Which is invaluable.
Yeah.
So, the risk is, and it's across the board, the more popular, the more successful we are as a city, the more expensive things get. The more expensive things get, the only people that can afford them are the big corporations, the big chains,
Right.
the things that turn your city into,
Every other city.
plain vanilla. We call it
Right.
the homogenization of America's cities. We're one of the last holdouts where it just hasn't happened.